with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is information overload and how do we navigate that? How do we find our way around conflicting information and all this bombardment of data and news and more. So we'll talk about that. But before we get started, let's just take a minute to settle in and get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just flooding into your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells and all your organs and bringing vital life energy. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, any stress, any toxicity, negativity. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light just lighting you up from the inside out, electrifying and energizing and bringing wonderful life and vitality into every molecule and every electron. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, toxicity. And now let's just gently press our palms together and softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel how delicious that sensation is to bring you present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. So I am just wanting to explore this topic of information overload and truth and not truth and how do we navigate situations where our the story keeps unfolding. You know, what's bringing this up for me is navigating a lot of different opinions and perspectives that people have around what's happening with COVID. And I do not pretend to know the whole story, but I've noticed there are people that are um, avidly supporting wearing masks and other people who are avidly supporting not wearing masks. And there's good morning, Crystal. Wonderful to have you here. We're talking about navigating information overload and what's true and what's not true. And I'm thinking that the place that I'm finding to come from, although it's not as comfortable as believing I have the answers to things, is is coming from a place of questioning, learning, reading, exploring vantage points that may seem to conflict, and to be open-minded enough to entertain different perspectives. I understand how daunting that can be because we don't really know. Uh, like maybe we don't ever really know. So that's what one thing that I say is that I entertain my beliefs as working hypotheses, and it is daunting to be exposed or to be able to access information that seems diametrically opposed or conclusions that seem diametrically opposed, and to be able to sort through what may be true, what may not be true. It's not really black and white. At least I haven't found it to be black and white, because I've heard cogent arguments on all different sides of things. And I think, how do we be with this? How do we be with a place of not knowing. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. It's so good to have you here. Um, we're talking about information overload and also navigating information. Like, how do we figure out what's true and what's not true? And I think that it's important to be questioning, to not just blindly accept what is being served to us through media and public pressure, and at the same time, I believe we should question it. I think we should question it intelligently. Good afternoon, Mike. Welcome. Great to have you here. I'm not sure where you are, that it's afternoon. It's morning where I am right now in the Philadelphia area in the US. But anyway, I'm just suggesting that we explore, that we keep an open mind, and that we explore and try to get a fuller picture of things. And I recognize that that can create overwhelm, because there is a certain comfort in believing that we know how things are and what's true and what's not true. Um, it's just it's a crazy, crazy world in so many ways, in terms of the information that we receive. And um, I I'm I'm kind of at a loss, to say that I have confidence in the truth of lots of things, other than when I touch into my heart to be present. And so I watched a disturbing interview this morning, and it was from a woman who, and I'm not gonna promote it here, because I don't know what's true and what's not true, but it's from a woman who has had a career um, in challenging certain, supporting her clients in looking for alternative alternatives to traditional medical diagnoses and protocols, for instance. So I think that um, she made a couple points that I thought were really, really interesting. And that was that we often, if we're going to buy a car, or we're going to buy a blender, or we're going to buy something, buy a house, that we do our due diligence, that we explore the ratings, the information more deeply than just saying, oh, going to a realtor and having them say, oh, this is a great house, buy this house for this money. Probably we'll do our due diligence. We'll learn about the neighborhood. We'll have a home inspection. We'll investigate. We might look at different ratings for different things we might purchase. We'll look at the Consumer Digest, for instance, to review. We'll do our due diligence. And yet, when we are diagnosed by a doctor or prescribed certain medications, typically we take those medications. And if we're told we should have surgery, typically we will go have the surgery, and oftentimes without getting a second opinion. And I think this is really, really an interesting uh, paradigm, that we that we kind of accept medical advice without necessarily doing the kind of diligence that we would do if we were going to buy a car. And here, this is our body and our well-being. And we have a lot of tools at our fingertips, um, to be researching. And that's where this information overload can come in, because we find that we can easily find inconsistencies in the information, or discrepancies or disparities or conflicts in information that we source. And so I think there's a point where one of the ways that a lot of us cope with information overload is to just sort of shut down and shut off, and to say, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to even bother anymore. And I think this is Christina. Is that right, Lefty? It's so important to know what a good source actually is. Exactly. So this is another thing that is a challenge: is how do we vet our sources? And I, I I also think that we are at the effect. Okay, so it's Christina. Good. I'm glad to remember that. Um, I think that we we need to vet our sources for sure, and to look at maybe what's behind the sources. So what? How do we determine credibility? That's a really important thing. Lots of times there are these things that go around in emails that are talking about um, horrible wrongs that are being done by a certain group, or uh, warnings about some kind of online scam, and that warning itself turns out to be a scam. And how do we vet that? Well, I know that for me, I had or have looked at Snopes, Snopes .com, I think. But what they talk about is the it's kind of debunking certain things and giving information and background. Good morning, Tammy. Welcome. We're talking about information overload and how we deal with it, but also we um, how we vet information. How do we discern? What tools of discernment do we have? I think um, the place that I go to ultimately is being in my heart rather than my head. And a lot of times the information that we encounter, you get a gut feeling about it. And I'm not saying to trust your gut, maybe. Well, I don't know. This is a really confusing area, I think, because ultimately, how do we decide what we believe? How do we choose to believe what we believe? And so this idea of a working hypothesis for beliefs works for me, to be able to say, at this moment, based on the information I have, this is the belief that I have. And I will look at other things. I will entertain other things as possibilities, and I will look to vet the source of those things. I just see. I think that another thing that came up in this interview that was a little concerning to me was the way that people go along to get along. And I'm sure you've heard the story about the frog in the boiling water, where the frog is in a pot of water and the heat is turned up gently, slowly, 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 so that the frog doesn't even notice until at some point the water is so hot that it kills the frog. But it didn't notice because the transition was so slow and subtle, so to speak. Now, I wouldn't recommend trying that. First of all, I don't think it's such a good idea to be boiling frogs. And second of all, I don't know if that's actually true, but that a frog wouldn't hop out of the water if it was getting hot. It's not an experiment I would recommend by any means. But I'm wondering if we're not in that kind of situation. And I think we're seeing things boiling over in a lot of ways. And I think that we get to keep thinking that we don't, like, the go along to get along is a really dangerous thing, where freedoms are tested, where um, civil liberties are tested, where social justice is tested. And we get to be vigilant and diligent in seeking the truth about what's happening in the world, and also checking in with our hi Pat, good afternoon, welcome. Checking in with our moral compass to be questioning and have cultivate curiosity. Curiosity has been a popular topic here for me. Curiosity, wonder, learning, expansion, all of that is really, really the spice of life in my book. And I think that it behooves us to keep an open mind and to act out of the knowledge that we have, while we continue to entertain something beyond that. Something to I was saying we have I think it's called, is it informational bias, or what I'm alluding to is we typically have an even unconscious bias to the things we already believe. So we have this bias that confirms our existing beliefs, where we'll collect data, we'll recognize sources that confirm what we already believe. Good morning, Andrea. Welcome. So glad to have you here. And so confirmation bias, that's what it's called. So what I'm wondering is if we have the capacity to step beyond our confirmation bias. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. Dido says confirmation bias. Yes, I think did I say it before? I said it before I saw your assist here, Dido, but I can always count on you. Thank you. Yeah, confirmation bias. So we tend to look for information that affirms what we already believe. And what I'm inviting us to do is to maybe seek out some information that conflicts with our own belief and entertain it. I think it was last week that we talked about courage, and one of the four pillars of courage was intellectual courage. And that intellectual courage is a courage to challenge your existing beliefs. And I think right now, especially, there's so much craziness in the world going on, politically, COVID wise, uh, environmentally, even in terms of advertising and we hear about greenwashing and on and on and on. And I think it is beholden to us to remain in the question rather than the answers. And I know that that is overwhelming. It can be overwhelming to because there's so much information out there. So maybe I see where we get to pick. Because we can't stay informed about everything all the time. Um, I I just find this to be a really important thing to to allow ourselves to investigate the the narratives that we're so subject to. Like this there's so much to learn right now about the human condition and about COVID and about health and about immunity and medical stuff. There's so much that is is important for us to inform ourselves about, because what we're looking at is something that has shifted global culture. And we are a human family. We get to look at what this is, that's happening around the world, and what are the consequences? What are the consequences of the choices that we make now for ourselves, for our communities, for our countries, for the world? And it's really important to separate our meaning making from fear. And it does take courage, I believe, to be investigating and to have a willingness when there's more information, when you find information that is vetted, information that challenges your vantage point, to it takes courage to have a willingness to perhaps change your mind about something, and to have a change of heart, perhaps. um, I watched, this is a really really awesome movie to check out. I watched The Social Dilemma the other day, and it's actually quite short and very disturbing, and it talks about the way that we are very 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 easily manipulated by certain devices um, in social media, um, in games, for instance, with the advertising and clickbait kinds of things, and how we can be manipulated and directed into pockets of information that are confirming our own biases. And it's all very sobering to be aware and to have um, to gain sort of a meta perspective on our actions and our thoughts. You know, when you, and I've done this, like playing solitaire or something on my phone, or a game where there's advertising, and it's advertising that's targeted to me, uh, that actually on occasion I have clicked on those ads because it was like, oh, that looks interesting. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm feeding the machine. And Christina says echo chamber. Indeed, indeed. So we end up in these echo chambers that just reflect ourselves back to ourselves. And what's happening as a result of this information is that uh, that we become tribalized, you know, that we become factionalized, that we become a manipulatable commodity. And this 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 global situation right now is something that should be making us think long and hard about what's real, what's not real, what's, you know, what's our responsibility to get information. And how do we do that? How do we get out of this echo chamber? So it was really, really interesting. I highly, highly recommend watching the movie Social Dilemma if you haven't already. As I said, it is short, but it talked about how governments can can exercise coups and things, and through social media and internet profiling kind of thing. And I just find that it's more important now than ever to be questioning, and to be learning, and to be having the intellectual courage to think for ourselves, you know, to not to step outside our own echo chamber and explore different vantage points so that we can hopefully come to a more rounded perspective. Um, so I'm wondering, are you experiencing this same dilemma that I am? You know, this dilemma about what's really true. You know, I know people who are avid proponents of wearing masks for safety, and I have um, believed that that would make a difference, and I also know people who are really committed to not wearing masks as a call for our freedom. And I'm kind of lost in the middle of this, to be learning more of the medical truth around things. It's really challenging. It's really, really challenging, and I don't have answers, and I I am living in hypotheses at this point, and trying to get educated, and to be able to, based on that education, make a sound decision, and with the recognition that there may be future information that would challenge that hypothesis. And I hope that we can all live in this question, to be working to to honor the best solution that we can have in this moment, and recognize that that's based on the information that we have right now. And then maybe something comes along that says, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't have to identify with my beliefs. I am not my beliefs. My beliefs are tools. My beliefs are tools that I can use as hypotheses to navigate the world. And as more information becomes available, then perhaps I redefine my beliefs, and I can do that without um, invalidating my being. Okay, so um, maybe what I'm suggesting is that we have less attachment to our beliefs and more willingness to inquire, and even to challenge our own beliefs, to see, well, does this, is there more? Is there more? And maybe we can get past the confirmation bias, and be truly informed, and make decisions that truly reflect our integrity. So that's kind of an open-ended conversation this morning, and I'm curious about your input. I so appreciate that, Christina, you saying it's important to know what a good source actually is. And I'm not sure how we determine that either. So with this whole idea of information overload, what do? We get to maybe take media breaks, and tune into our heart, and our sense of, there's a lot of times when you can read something and say, there's something fishy about this. There, you can hear something and say, it doesn't feel right in my gut. And I think that there is something to that gut response. Rosalind says, yes, I've seen the movie you mentioned, Social Dilemma. Peggy Hall is against wearing masks. Haven't explored the website. There are a lot of people who are against wearing masks, and there are a lot of people who are for wearing masks. And I think part of that uh, choice is maybe based on a different perspective on what's actually happening underlying the mandate to wear masks? Like, what's the nature of this threat? I don't know, but I suspect that that may be part of the case. I mean, if we were, I'm not even going to go there, but I do think it's worthwhile exploring different sides. And so, Obi, welcome. I haven't seen your name here before. Welcome. What do we do? Discern. Yes, with the heart and gut, and that's ultimately what we get to do. I think is look at something, uh, allow yourself to consider it, and then feel into, there's something fishy here, or there's it feels right, and still be willing to not identify with our positions. Okay, we're not our positions. We are so much more than that. And when we're called through something that we learn to shift a position, we do have the freedom to do that without it compromising our identity and our ultimate beingness. So I really appreciate your engagement, and I just really think that the thing that we all need to do is to be aware, be awake, and to be discerning. And so I think that's it for today. I appreciate you joining me in these meanderings and considerations, thoughts. Um, so do your due diligence, and know that it's fortunately or unfortunately, it's never done, right? And yeah. So I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live every weekday morning on Enlightened World Network's Facebook page. And I invite you to check out the other programming on Enlightened World Network. Awesome community, and listen closely to your heart. And with that, lots and lots of love. Rosalind says she loves you, Maggie Poo. And so Maggie and I will sign off for today. And until next time, lots and lots of love.